I was just exercising a little bit of control there, keeping you standing up. You'll understand as we go through today's message. You know, in the scriptures today, a couple things before we get really rocking and rolling into the message were that Herod, well, some of the Pharisees, I found that interesting, some of the Pharisees had heard Jesus talk and teach about the narrow way before this, and it must have touched their hearts because they went to Jesus and said, hey, you got to be careful, man. Herod is out to get you. Now, if you know anything about the scriptures and so forth, Herod was king of the Jews, and Jesus' very being had threatened Herod as long as Jesus was alive. Remember, he had the babies killed because he wanted to try to eliminate any kind of threats and challenges to his power and authority, his ability to control the people. The Pharisees wanted control. Herod wanted control. Everything was about control, right? I think you probably know that in our current political situation globally, people like to have control, don't they? And they like to hold on to it, and they'll do just about anything to do that, won't they? Yeah. Well, anyway. So they're wanting to control, and then it kind of transitions. You know, Jesus said, well, I got to do what I got to do, and I'm on my way to heal and to do these things and cast out demons. And on the third day, he gives that little teaser that we pick up on. It'll all be finished. We know the third day is Easter Sunday. All right? But then Jesus goes into this lament about how people just ain't listening. Yeah, I said ain't. All right? So they aren't listening to Jesus. He's trying. He's doing all these miraculous things. He's calming storms, casting out demons, healing people, teaching with authority, and yet it seems as if the people just don't get it. They're far, far, far away. Even Jesus got frustrated when things were out of his control. I bet you can identify with that. Because, I mean, honestly, control is something that I think we all want. Especially the more chaotic our lives get, the more chaotic the circumstances of life get, the more control we want to exercise. Because that sense of control, we believe, is going to lead to happiness, contentment, success. It's going to lead to all the good things that we long for. If only we had more control. If only we had more control. If I had control, I could, well, there's no telling what I could do. If I had control, I would probably change a few things in the world for certain. I'd try to get people to stop fighting with one another. I'd like to see a bold and beautiful revival come into the church, capital C, and just reestablish the truth once again in the world. Seems like to me today, my need for control would be, hey, stop telling me all these lies. Tell me the truth. Can you identify with that? Seems like everything's a lie these days, and they just try to sell you that it's the truth. And they figure if they repeat it long enough, you'll buy it. I ain't buying. I got a brain. And that need for control also stems from, you know, I'm sure you may have heard it or said it yourself. If everybody was just like me, the world would be a great place. Because we'd all sleep in, we'd all take naps, and it'd be fun. We'd spend time fishing and hunting for Bigfoot. It'd be great if just the world were like me. But see, we tend to think we know the best. So a lot of times we get so wrapped up in thinking we know better that we try to be God, right? We even try to take control from God's hands. What his plan and purpose is, because we know best. We've thought this out, man. Here's the famous words, right? I got this. I got this. Man, I got it all figured out. I've got the plan. I know what's going to happen. And we think that we know the best way. We think we know the thing we need. Get those achievements, to get those experiences we desire, to have those relationships we long for. And if only we had more control, complete control, we could make it all happen. All the success and the significance and the security and the satisfaction would rain down from above into our lives, and it'd be all good. Right? We just need more control. We want life on our terms. We want life to meet our plans, to make sure it's our preferences that get catered to and fulfilled. I'm going to stomp on your toes and go off script for a minute. If you doubt that, let me just say what happens in a worship service. Okay? I bet Darren can identify with this. There'll be a song that we sing, and it'll be a song most likely. And somebody will fuss and complain and carry on. I don't like that song. It's 7 words that we sing 11 times over and over and over. Why don't we sing the old hymns? They were good enough for Jesus. What's that about? It's about your preference, right? Only if I had control, or if I could just make Pastor Tom preach for exactly 5 minutes, I'd be happy. Because then I could get to the restaurant before the Baptist, and I could get the chicken right after it came out of the fryer. That's our preference. It happens even in worship, in our spiritual lives. We want what we want, and we want it the way we want it, and we want it now. There's only 2 problems with that. Only 2 that I've identified for the purposes of this particular thing. You know, even when things are really in our control, we feel in control, we think that we're in control, how many of us are truly satisfied when we get what we think we want? Think about that for a minute. Are you really satisfied when you get what you want? Not usually, right? Something else draws your attention to the next thing that you want. Oh, I got a house, now I need a bigger house. This house doesn't have what I want. I need a house with a pool. Now it's not just a house with a pool. It's got to have a hot tub and a 3-car garage. You know, it's always wanting more. Always wanting more of life, more of things, more of happiness. And we chase after that in our control, and even when things are in our control, it doesn't always work out. And when that happens, we get frustrated, right? Because the second thing that is a problem with our whole idea of control is that you've seen the bumper sticker, right? The one that says, life happens, or something along those lines. Right? We know that life happens. We can't possibly control everyone, everything, all of the circumstances. I mean, the children's message was perfect, right? Can we control the weather? Who would have thought on one day at 70 degrees, the next we were in inches of snow on the ground, and this morning, or last night, it got really, really cold. And it's going to change again this week. We can't control everything. Life happens. But, and to illustrate that maybe more powerfully, there was a scientist, her name was Ellen Langor, and in the 70s, she developed something called the illusion of control. And Doug Barnett is going to help me to demonstrate something here. I got to get rid of it. This is a normal pack of playing cards. This has not been pre-set up. I just asked Doug to help me out ahead of time. So I'm getting rid of the jokers and the other cards. There's 52 cards in this deck. They've been shuffled a few times as a practice, and I'm going to shuffle them here, Doug. Now, the object of this game is simple. You're just going to pick a card. Doug, you can cut the deck at any point or pick out a card. for your pleasure, and then we'll go from there. Sorry, I'm not very good at shuffling. In fact, you know how they say, or lucky in love, bad at cards, or something like that? I'm lucky because I stink at cards, so I'm really good at it.
I think they're shuffled.
All right, you think they're shuffled? All right, well, they're certainly mixed up. But I'm not very good at cards. I'm not very good at shuffling stuff. But let me try to get them halfway. That's good. No marked cards. I watch a lot of Westerns. I try to figure out how they do that. All right, so there we go. You can cut the deck, pick any card you want, and we'll see what happens. Wow, that was elaborate there. All right, I'm going to go ahead. What's your card? 7. Well, 7's not too hard to beat, right? Oh, man, 5. Well, you got me there. All right, so let's try this one more time. We'll go 2 out of 3. Let's make it fair. All right, are you satisfied with this shuffling? I won't try to drop it again. Right? What is it? Another 7. Woo! A 4. Well, Doug, the game's over because you've already won the 2 out of 3. All right. Thank you, Doug. Let's give Doug a hand. So this Ellen Langor did some experiments just like that, and this is what she found. She found that in that game of cards, or whether it was picking your own lottery numbers, or she had another couple of experiments, but what she found out was, I intentionally dropped those cards, by the way. She found that in one of her experiments, if the person was messing up in the shuffling and everything else, it gave the other person who was picking the card more confidence that they would pick a higher card, because it's obvious this clown doesn't know anything about cards or what he's doing, right? And then to add on to it, Doug just happened to, both times he picked a 7, but even though that was a low card, I just happened to pick a low card too. And if we were to play that game over and over, like flipping a coin, right? We know that the chances, we've probably heard, the probability is a 50-50. You play it long enough, it's going to eventually 50-50 heads, 50-50 tails. It's going to be Doug wins half the time, I win half the time. But we have this illusion that somehow, if somebody's incompetent, if somebody's less than, or we think they're less than, that we have control. We get confident if we start to pick cards and win, right? Last night as I was rehearsing with Tammy to see if this would all work out, she kept saying, well, let me shuffle. You're setting it up. She was suspicious at first that I was doing a trick, right? But it wasn't a trick, but she wanted control to shuffle those cards because she thought if she shuffled the cards, she'd have more control. Well, anyway, she did all these experiments, and with lottery tickets, do you know, and I'm sure you know because you get as frustrated as I do when you go to the gas station and you have to go inside to pay or whatever, and there's 3 people ahead of you and they all want to pick their lottery numbers. I only have a few minutes, not all afternoon. But people feel they have more control, that their chances are better to win the lottery if they pick the numbers and not somebody else. Here's an interesting point that I came across too, right? Have you ever gotten into an elevator and you're in a hurry and you want to go up, and so there's that thing on the panel, right? It says close door. And so you're pushing that thing, close the door. Come on, I got to get up there. You know that thing doesn't work. Seriously, it doesn't work. But what does it do? It gives you the illusion that you're in control. And it works just enough, like you press it that one time and it works. So you think, well, it must work. But it doesn't. It doesn't work, I swear to you. I looked it up. Something I do when I'm driving down the road, you might do this too, and you're in a hurry and you're hitting about every traffic light there is, right? I'll sit there and I'll be driving along and the light is green, and I'll just say, green, 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 green. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but it gives me the illusion that I'm in control of it. Now, that's important for a few different reasons, that illusion of control, because it forms certain thinking. For one, it makes us think more positively than we normally would. You get a little success in a card game, hey, I've got the system figured out. That's why people get problems with gambling, right? They figure if I just get the system figured out, then I'll win. Well, it doesn't always work. Vegas isn't going broke. Well, the other thing is that there's got to be a cause for something. When something happens, there's got to be a cause where there really isn't any. Well, there must be a reason I keep losing, or there must be a reason that the light's turning red all the time when I'm trying to tell it to stay green. You get this kind of thing where you get a magical kind of thinking. And I had a slide that was supposed to go up. I don't know. Barry, did you get that slide? There you go, right there. Sorry I made it rain. Stepped on an ant. How could you? Have you ever heard that superstition? I know I've heard step on a crack, break your mama's back. Don't step under a ladder. Black cat runs across your path. It's going to be a bad day. Pick up a penny. If it's heads, you got good luck. All this other stuff, right? It leads into that kind of illusion of control, leads into that magical thinking. But it also invents explanations. Why is that important for us? Well, theologically, how many of you or have said or have heard the term, well, everything happens for a reason? Right? No, it doesn't always happen for a reason. It's not God's fault. Because that's a way that we place the outcome of something that we expect onto God. Well, I didn't get that job. Everything happens for a reason. I got the diagnosis at the doctor. I'm sick. Oh, everything happens for a reason. Put that out of your vocabulary and instead replace it with this. Nothing happens outside the knowledge of God. Because half the time, folks, I know in my life, when I say, well, everything happens for the reason, because of something, it's me. I've screwed it up. I've made a bad decision. I've tried to be in control. Right? So, anyway, we think we know best. That's the point. We've worked it all out, and we've got all these things lined to how things should happen, the best way it should happen. We got this, right? But what about when things don't go our way, even though we think we have control? You know, people we care about do get ill. Maybe we get ill. Relationships end or take a turn for the worst unexpectedly. Our careers, all of a sudden, we had imagined our careers would take a certain trajectory, and the company downsizes and everything changes. What about when people that we admire let us down? We just don't have the control we think we have. And there is a way, though. There is a way to let go of control and to experience those things like success and significance and security and satisfaction of life. And the first thing we need to do is realize the boundaries of our control. The boundaries of our control. Have you ever tried to control everything? I mean, literally tried to control everything? It's frustrating, isn't it? It's exhausting. It's going to be my way or the highway. And what happens when you say that? Usually you end up in an argument. Because it just doesn't work out that way. A lot of times, because we get exhausted, we get focused on the wrong things because we're focused on being in control of everything, and that breeds competition and climbing that ladder of success and running the rat race. And sooner or later, we find ourselves in debt because we've got to have a better toy than the neighbor's got. If the neighbor has a 3-wheel ATV, we've got to get one of them fancy gators with a closed-in cab with air conditioning and the best sound system there is, right? If my neighbor gets a boat, I've got to get a bigger boat. If my neighbor gets a raise somehow or other, I've got to make more money to keep up. And we compete and try to earn the respect of others who don't really even care. They aren't paying any attention to you. You just think they are because you want to be in control. But the thing that we can control the most is this. We can control our attitude, we can control our behaviors, and we can control our response to life's unexpected things. We can always control our response. The only thing that you can really control, the only choice that you can make in life is who you're going to follow and you. That's the point. That's the second point. The choice you have really in life is what philosophy, what way of life, what way are you going to live? He talked about the narrow road and the wide road before this scripture passage. Are you going to be on the narrow road or are you going to take the wide road? The narrow road leads to salvation. The narrow road leads to disaster. The way we get control is to give it away. Sounds weird, doesn't it? That's how Jesus works. That's how God works. Jesus works in unexpected ways. When we try to control, we usually end up frustrated. When we surrender and relinquish and give our lives fully, I'm saying fully, because you're saying, I already did that, Pastor. I'm saying fully to Jesus. You heard me there, right? Fully, all the way. Not just, well, I'll give him a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but I ain't giving him this. Give your life fully to Jesus, things will happen. But it's not going to happen the way you expect it. Let me just real briefly go over my call to ministry. So I'm living in Missouri, get out of the Army, series of events, gets me back into school, and I was going to get my teaching degree. So I was going to become a teacher after the Army. So I go to school, I'm getting ready to graduate. There's a school system 35 miles away from where I'm living, but it's a closed school system. It's a school system known for the Good Old Boys Network, and if you ain't from around here, you ain't getting in. Well, I ain't from around here, but I interview anyway. Amazing, I get the job. I go to school, it's paid for, I get the job. I'm thinking, man, God is really working. He's opening door after door. That's my plan. That's His purpose for me, to be a teacher. I'm focused 100% into that's God's plan. That's my call, to be a teacher. Well, a series of events goes through. I become a youth director. I'm up in the north woods of Minnesota in the Boundary Waters one day, and I'm walking down the trail, and God speaks to me and says, I'm not done with you yet, Tom. I want you to go into full ordained ministry. You have got to be kidding me. You know what has happened in the past. You know the mistakes I've made. You've known all along, and you want me to do that. I can't even talk to people one-on-one, let alone in a group. God says, I want you to go into ministry. I forget about it, and I'm thinking the same thing. Well, God's got this plan. I mean, He's opened the doors for me to be a teacher. And in fact, I was in a Sunday school class, and I'm, boasting about, I can't think of anything better in the world than being a teacher. That's my call in life. God's opened the doors and made it happen. And then He unexpectedly throws this in my path. You're going to go into ministry. 5 years comes along. 5 years between hearing God in the woods and the time things started moving. I was up for tenure. I had a choice. Do I teach and stay secure and safe and comfortable, or do I answer this call now because God's opened the door for me to go to seminary free? God's opening doors of possibility for my call to ministry. You see, I had it all planned out. I thought I knew, but God had something different in store. You know, sometimes the only way things happen in your life is when God pushes you outside of your comfort zone, outside your own illusion of control so that He can be in control. Think about the life of Jesus. He didn't meet the expectation. The expectation was He was going to be a mighty military king, throw off the Roman chains, and Israel would be restored. That's what part of what threatened Herod. That's why Herod wanted his life. But Jesus didn't come to destroy His enemies. He came to make them friends. Jesus didn't come to free us from the world's prisons, but to free us from our own prisons. He didn't come just to save us from our enemies and sin. He came to save us from ourselves. He came to establish His kingdom, not with might, but with mercy. You see, Herod was concerned because he thought Jesus was going to be the king. And He is a king. But He's not just any king. He's the king. He's the promised king. He's the prophesied king. He's the king of all. He has no rival. He has no equal. When you allow Jesus to be king of your life, you don't have to fear that you're missing out because Jesus is the Lord. He's in charge. You don't have to fear about losing control because He's already got it under control. You don't have to fear bad news because He's powerful enough to take what it was intended for evil and harm and change it into good for the glory of the Lord. You don't have to worry that His death ended His kingdom because it was just the beginning when He was enthroned in heaven. Do I have to go through all that again? I mean, that was tough. You see, here's the bottom line. Have to fear not being in control. Jesus is fully your king. So who is your king?